everyone, I'm Scott, and welcome to this to the GrowSeattle Grow Lab Garden. At least that's what I call it here. Today we have quite a few things to go over as usual. So we have our Shiitake mushroom log back there.
Hello everyone, I'm Scott.
Got to turn that off. Just a sec. Okay, sorry about that. A little bit of a false start there. Just have to have that going so I can tell when we're live and if the stream is working. So as I was saying, we have our Shiitake mushroom log back there, but I was just on vacation for about 10 days. So that log has actually gone dormant. So I'm not going to be able to harvest and I'm not going to water it today. But as you can see, I have some beautifully air-dried mushrooms that I'm thinking that I can just break off because they're fairly dry and brittle at this point. And I'm thinking that maybe I can just rehydrate those and use them for cooking later. So this Shiitake mushroom log, since this was the first flush of mushrooms, should have at least another full flush in it once all of those mushrooms are harvested. I'm thinking that that log is just dormant and that we can rehydrate it and get everything going again. The mushroom fruits probably wouldn't be able to get going, but the mycelium that's in the log is probably just dormant and ready to come back to life. So I'm probably going to do that after the show off camera, but other than that, that is the update on the mushroom log. Okay. I have listed feeding the compost, but to be honest, I don't really have anything to feed it. Everything in the garden looks pretty good, so I don't really have, I guess I have some basil leaves that I can pluck and maybe put in there. This basil is just in a mason jar, so it's actually not doing so well. I'm going to take some cuttings later. I'm just going to top it here and plant those. Mason jar works, but it gets really full of algae. And this is what it ends up being if I can unhook it from this camellia. So this is what it ends up looking like. You might not be able to see, so let's try to bring you closer. That is just a dark algae mess. The roots are super overgrown because, you know, this is just a pint jar, I believe. So it doesn't really get a nice healthy root system in my opinion. Because obviously you have to feed the basil, but that also feeds the algae. So I guess one way you could deal with that is you could empty it out and rinse it out, but I think that's just a lot of work. Why not just put it in some soil, and that way the algae won't take over and kill off all your basil. But I did check the compost and it is coming along. Let's see here if I can maybe show you. Okay. We got some good growth going on in there. Obviously the mold is helping to break stuff down. And I think eventually we're going to have to start stirring this up, but I'm not going to do that now, and I might actually take it outside to do that, just because I don't want to get all the mold spores around. Okay, so I guess we're on to some germination updates. We have, where did I put it? Yeah, okay. we have these guys. Now, I think the last update was that these guys were about to pop. And they've grown, let's see, about, one of them's about an inch, maybe slightly more than that, and one of them is an inch and a half. But there are actually four little seedlings in here, and that is because grapefruit seeds oftentimes have multiple embryos going on. So these ones happen to be twins, so a twin and a twin, so that gives us 4. These were both from the same grapefruit, so they're all siblings, and apparently they can grow 7 or 8 in one seed. So I guess depending on how long the fruit is allowed to stay on the tree, it will keep developing new embryos. And I think that's rather astonishing. I never knew that about seeds, that they could be twins or multiples. So I thought that was rather interesting. Apparently it's very, very common for grapefruits. I don't know if it's common for other citrus. I didn't actually look that up, now that I think about that. I might go ahead and write that down. Okay, yeah, we'll go ahead and look that up. That'll be interesting to know. Okay, so the other germination update are the Habaneros. This guy is about an inch and a half tall, and he is starting to put out his first real leaves. Now, I think there were supposed to be 3 of these in each container, at least 2, but only one popped up in this one, and only one popped up in the other one that I started. I was hoping that I would at least get 2, and I did, so that's good. And here is our little Japanese maple seedling that was started from seed from our Japanese maple tree out back. And all I did is put it in some sphagnum peat moss, sphagnum moss peat, I don't know what it's called. And I just put it in this container, and I had just some cling wrap on top, enough to drape down over so that water wouldn't get up inside. And there was enough moisture, because I gave it a good soaking, that it lasted all winter long. Now, Japanese maple seeds, and I'm thinking most maple seeds, have to be stratified, which means that they have to go through that freezing and warming cycle, before they will germinate. And part of it is that it cracks the outer shell, and part of it is that it knows that it's transitioning from winter into spring, and it's ready to germinate. I was actually a little bit disappointed because he hasn't changed very much since I left on vacation, but I am glad that it survived, because I was a little bit worried. And I'm going to go ahead and take it out of the propagation box, I think, because I do see that there's a little bit of yellowing on the tips of the first leaves, and I don't really see any roots. Before I thought I could. Before I left on vacation, I thought I could, but that's I guess interesting. I think that might be it for germination update. Although there are a few more dragon fruit and another potato that came up. Okay, so I think we'll move on to the new plant update. This is the pumpkin that was planted on 210. The last episode, I believe it was just starting to pop up and put out its first leaves. I do see the starting of the first true leaves coming out. But those cotyledon leaves are very nice and dark green, and I think that this is going to be an interesting experiment, I think, because, you know, pumpkin vines get huge, and being able to grow that inside in this rather small area, this is 10 foot long by 9 foot wide, it's going to be a challenge. But I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to use maybe the tomatoes as a trellis for the pumpkin in some way to help it, to have the pumpkin vine go up and around as well. And that's going to be rather interesting because I believe those pumpkins are like the jack-o'-lantern pumpkins, so they will eventually get to be a fair size. So I'm going to have to devise a way of holding those in place so that they can develop. The other alternative that I have is to train them along the ground. I might have to pull the aquarium out a little bit, as well as the future animal cage. That's going to be for a hamster, actually 2 hamsters. Yeah, I think that might be interesting to do that, to have it go wrap around, and then actually it could kind of loop around if I needed it to back to kind of where it is. It's going to make it really beautiful and lush in here, I think, because pumpkin leaves are nice and big, and the pumpkin flowers are going to be nice and big as well. You know, it's going to be about, I think the pumpkin flowers are about the size of like maybe a cup like this. It just kind of depends on the species. Okay, so I think that's, okay, so last episode I decided to plant rice, some rice grains that had already started to germinate, just like I have here. I don't know if you can see that very well. The water's a little bit murky, although I did rinse it last night. But you can start to see there, there's some greening in the shoots. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, actually quite a few. I would say about 10 of them are starting to grow their shoots. And rice, being rice, is very water tolerant, so starting it off like this, it works just fine. But what I was going to show you here is that I planted, I believe, 40 rice grains in amongst these 2 apple trees and this pine cutting. I don't know if this pine cutting is going to end up working out. A lot of the needles fell off, but we will see. But yeah, there are 40 rice grains here, and there is 1, 2 that have started to sprout, and the others won't be too far behind. I did give it a really good watering before I left, and you know, there's some clay pebbles down here so that there would be a moisture gradient. Because the house is so warm, well, not so warm, but the house is warm because my wife is here, it allows that water here to evaporate up and get soaked back up into here at a fairly constant rate. So when I came back, the top of the soil was not too bad. But yeah, here's a third one. Yeah, you're not going to be able to see it because it's just super, super tiny, but yeah, there's one right there, and right there, and obviously I can't really tilt this that well. But yeah, it's kind of exciting. I feel like this, this little scene here is going to be quite a little, almost bonsai garden type scene. Once the rice starts to grow, eventually the rice will overtake the apple trees, obviously. But until then, it's just a fun little design scape that I put together. Okay. So yeah, I think that's it for new plants. Looks like the rhododendron cuttings are doing well. There's new leaf buds starting to actually come into action here. Now this rhododendron is just an awesome purple rhododendron. It's got these really awesome, they're more trumpet shaped than the wider rhododendrons that are more common, at least in the Pacific Northwest. But yeah, I think these rhododendron cuttings are eventually going to take, which is very nice, because that is my favorite rhododendron out there. And okay, so how many do we have? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, I think we have 9 rhododendrons, and there's only one of that purple one, and I want to fill out some more space in the garden with that particular one. Okay. So hydrangeas. Hydrangeas are going gangbusters, at least the climbing ones. They are really starting to go. As you can see here, the climbing ones have these climbing roots, which will become root roots if they're exposed to water for a long enough period of time. So, these ones are almost certainly rooted by now. What I thought was interesting is I tried an experiment just putting one of these buds from here, ones that I had to rip off down, and it is starting to bloom. The leaves are starting to open. I guess that's not really bloom, but they're starting to open, and so I'm wondering if that is eventually going to root, or if it's just a kind of last gasp effort. But it actually looks just as green as this, and that is really starting to open up, so that's exciting. We only have 2 hydrangeas, one this climbing one, and one just a beautiful blue one out there. But yeah. Yeah, I think hydrangeas are just super easy to propagate, and I'm really new to gardening, to be honest. This is like my first garden that I've grown, from scratch. The rest of the garden was all landscaped before. Oh, actually 10 rhododendrons, because I forgot the one. Oh, 11. I forgot there are 2 back here. Okay, yeah, I'm a dummy. 11 rhododendrons, anyway. But yeah, this garden was already pre-planted. The only things that I did out there was I planted garlic, onions, garlic, onions. I bought a fig tree and the red table grapes, and a hardy kiwi, which are all starting to come and start to produce leaves. So actually, speaking of which, I was going to show you some of the cuttings. I want to pull this one out, but speaking of, this one here is the hardy kiwi, and this one here is a hardy fig. And as you can see, both of them are just going now. So I think eventually those will take root and be very, very nice for us. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There were 6 cuttings of the hardy kiwi, and all of them are starting to put out leaves. This one right there, I can't really do it, but that one is just barely starting to put out leaf bud. But, you know, that is to be expected. And let's see. Speaking of the red table grapes, do I have a, yeah. Well, I can pull any of them, but they're all starting. But yeah, we got some leaves coming here. Now, the traditional method of doing these propagations is taking dormant stems, right? Well, I didn't start this little garden until February. I think February 5th was the first episode. But I started the garden, well actually no, it had to be late January then, because things were already starting to go. Okay, so late January. But I didn't take these cuttings until I think February 10th. And outside they already had leaf buds that were less developed than this right here, but still visibly semi-developed. And I just took it and stuck it in the soil, and I think that it's eventually going to root. I don't think that this is going to be its last hurrah. Oftentimes when you take cuttings, just like cut flowers, you know, they'll go through their whole blooming cycle, but it's not gonna obviously make a new plant. But this one I think is going to, and which is really nice because those grapes were really good straight off the vine, eating grapes, and I think they will thrive indoors, especially with this window, southern facing window. But it's indirect southern facing window light, which is awesome because we have enough trees back there that we're not going to get the direct through this window, but we do get direct in the garden space, so that is quite nice. Okay, plum tree's doing good, lemon tree's doing good. This air layer, I hope, is coming along. It was getting a little bit dry, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a little bit of a squirt. It's wrapped in just some cling wrap, cellophane or whatever you want to call it. And it was starting to smell pretty funky. Almost stepped on that cup. It was starting to smell pretty funky, so I kind of opened it up a little bit. But if you open it up, obviously the soil around it is going to dry out quicker. But lemons don't mind so much drying out and getting re-wet. Just like any other citrus, I believe, they are susceptible to root rot. And I would imagine that if you're trying to make an air layer, that that would also be susceptible to some forms of rot. But luckily, it's coming along. Beautiful new leaves since I went on vacation, and it is, I'd say, what, 2.5 feet? I mean, it's just under half of me, I guess, and I'm 5'9". We had some garlic come up. Oh, is actually a rice that I planted earlier, even though it says garlic. I don't know why it says garlic, but I believe this is actually a rice. I don't know why none of the other seeds came up, but that's a little bit further developed rice. We have our corn, and eventually I'm going to have to transplant this, but I don't really have a place to transplant it to quite yet. Need to get more buckets. There's a Japanese maple over here. That I'm quite pleased with. This was a trident, had 3 branches and then a single stem, but it's starting to put out leaves, which is really, really cool. So again, this one is off of the Japanese maple back there, which is the mother plant of that seedling. So this is the mother plant of this seedling. So this is a cutting off of the mother of this seedling. So I'm going to plant these, eventually I'm going to plant these together in a little Japanese maple bonsai, I guess family portrait. And hopefully this one will outpace this one so that it, it stays a little bit bigger. But yeah, I'm quite pleased, and I'm hoping that this one is about to start sending out its first true leaves. I can't really tell because I can't really see in there so well. But I guess I have a microscope, so maybe I can, a digital microscope, so maybe I can take a picture and post it. But yeah. Camellia cuttings are doing really well. I think the camellias are just so beautiful. They're such beautiful flowers, very prolifically flowering trees, and apparently they root really well, or they cut cuttings really well. These particular cuttings were just break-offs from the base, because they'll start to send off new growths off the base, and I don't want that. I want it to just be the tree. I don't need any more huge trunks or low branches or whatever they are. So I just broke some of those off and took off the leaves and planted them. They are really, really coming along. They actually look a lot healthier than when I left on vacation, so that's nice. They've just been chilling in this propagation box. Actually, I don't know if you can see it. Let me check the stream. Yep. Okay. Yeah, you can see it. So it's just a large tote that has a lid that's in the other room. There's some potting soil at the bottom because I was using it to mix up potting soil. I just pushed all that to one end and sprayed that down. That makes it so that there's extra moisture, right? So the humidity level in here is going to be a lot higher, and I just propped it up with a little bit of cardboard so that there's a flow of air. And so everything in there is going really, really well. I mean, obviously I showed you that hardy fig, and the hardy kiwi, the mint. Oh my gosh, this mint has gone off. Of course it does. I mean, it's basically a weed, but yeah, this has grown by about that much in 10 days. So that is pretty cool. I love mint. Now, one thing that you do have to kind of be careful with a propagation box like this, and going on vacation, is it can get a little bit funky. So you just have to be careful with that, because eventually it will start to wreak havoc on your plants that are in there. Here is some sort of tree. I don't actually know what kind of tree this is. I believe it is some sort of maple, but it's a rescue, well, not a rescue. It's one that I pulled from a trail path. It was kind of in the middle, and it would have just gotten trampled eventually, but I pulled it up and brought it in, and it is going gangbusters. When I first got it, it was like this tall. Seriously, this tall. It's grown about that much in a couple of months. It is just loving it in here because, you know, this is a Western Washington plant, and it loves being warm. They really thrive in this room temperature, and they also are fairly low light trees. At least they're capable of being low light trees. You know, obviously growing in the temperate forest that we have here, it's really got to be good at taking in the light, because the huge trees above it are going to be shading it out. Okay, well, that's all that I really had planned. Because it's Sunday, it wasn't an actually like scheduled show, but I was just so happy to come back to this. Everything thriving. Pepper plants, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flowers on that. None on those, but those were pruned, or not pruned, but topped. There's one on there, and then there's actually a couple that I don't think ever got pollinated on this one, but that's okay. That's okay. It is putting out one pepper that's about yay big, golf ball size right now. But it is a full bell pepper, so that is eventually going to be a full bell pepper size. And I have here some other kind of pepper. This is a Korean pepper. It's called a gochu pepper. And I was going to plant some of those because they're really good in Korean cooking, and actually any kind of cooking. They're a lot milder than a jalapeno. But every once in a while you'll get one and you'll be like, whoa! But they're kind of similar to, if you've ever had pho, those kind of peppers. But oftentimes at pho restaurant it is just a jalapeno. But it's supposed to be more similar to these. Yeah, my mouth is watering now because I was just talking about pho. Oh, this mango hopefully is going to start to come. Yeah, we had some dragon fruit seedling, new dragon fruit shoots. I'm hoping that this little guy is going to make it, because he was starting to come around, and then I think I forgot to water him or something, and now he's looking a little worse for wear. There is a little bit of green up there on the tip, so, but the actual growing tip looked like it might have dried up, so that might not be good. So you might have to send something new off, but I think he will make it. I think, because he did have some good roots. So again, this was a rescue from my yard. It was grown in a place that he wasn't allowed to grow, but now he can be a bonsai. So, new lease on life. It was just he was growing right next to the front entryway path, and that's just not a good place for him to be. These poinsettia cuttings are not looking too good. You know, I think they just actually, well, this one is looking really well. That one looks well. This one looks well. Actually, no, this one does look well. That's a new leaf. What am I talking about? This guy I don't think is gonna make it, but he was like seriously a single node or a double node, no leaves, nothing. All right. Yeah, this pepper plant is going. That's great. Oh, I had four tomatoes ripening up. Another 3 there. 4. Another. So that's 8. Can't really tell which vines are the ones producing, but quite a few flowers up there. Nice new growth coming. You know, this tomato plant is going to be plant stock for, you know, for my parents, for neighbors, for friends. I'm going to try to sell some, and plant some obviously in the backyard, probably in the front yard too. We actually have so the house layout is not my favorite for this particular property. I think the house should have been closer to the road, but probably I think when this was built, the zoning restrictions and the offsets or whatever it's called, offsets from the road were pretty big. Now those offsets have been reduced to I think it's like 10 feet in this particular neighborhood because it's never going to get widened out. There are only 2 entrances to the neighborhood. It's kind of, I don't know what you would call it, but you know, I guess a suburban cul-de-sac type neighborhood, but more of a grid pattern, but with 2 entrances. But this particular layout, I feel, is not so good. We would have had an awesome garden space if this whole house was brought forward towards the street by about 25 feet. It would totally double the space back there and reduce the space up front, but who cares? Up front is just you know, some roadies and a really long driveway, which is nice, but we could have had some space back here for like basketball court or something. I don't know. Yeah, I mean that's really all that I had to talk about, except yeah. I guess I was going to talk about the contrast between the climbing and the non-climbing hydrangea. This is the non-climbing hydrangea, and I'm not sure if it's going to actually make it. This growing tip up here is very dry. These leaves are probably going to fall off. Those buds look still active, but because it's not climbing, it didn't have those climbing roots, which I think can turn into adventitious roots. So I guess that's a difference between the climbing and non-climbing hydrangeas, but we'll see. I think we will just keep them going, and if they make it, they make it. If they don't, they don't. This blueberry. This growing tip down here is definitely still going. This one up here, I'm not so sure about. It feels really dry, and it's starting to blacken up here on the stem. So we'll see about that. Oh, there was a raspberry too. So this is an ornamental wild raspberry, I believe, or something in that family. And I believe this is gonna root. It was a fairly long cutting, so there's like 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 nodes under. I just kind of snow coned it up to get one more node. You can see obviously there's a flower bud, which is also putting out leaves. I don't know if you can see that. But I did pull off some buds here, and a couple down. This one is new, coming out, starting out. There's the growing tip, making another zigzag. But yeah. Poinsettia, the one that those cuttings are from, is really going. These onions are just crazy. These are just regular green onions, we call them here. Spring onions, some people call them. The rosemary was looking dried out, so I gave it a good watering last night. I'm gonna have to maybe trim that up, clean that up a little bit. This pine cone has really started to open up. This tip was very, very tight, and now it's really starting to open up. I'm not sure if it's ever going to sprout because I'm not sure if they have to be stratified. Here's a Douglas fir. Again, probably needs to be stratified, but if you plant it like that, it's supposed to grow. So I'm just trying it in water. This pepper plant is an untopped plant. This pepper plant was torn, like broken off. It's starting to come back. It only had one set of nodes, which was fortunate. This one's an untopped. This one's, oh wait, where's the topped one then? Oh no, this one is the topped one. It's starting to send out. Let's see. It has two side branches. And this one's also a topped one. So I'm just seeing what the difference is going to be between the topped and the untopped ones in growing it in a strawberry planter. This is just a strawberry planter that I picked up at Home Depot. I think it was like 10 or 15 bucks. But I just wanted to see, because I don't, pepper plants get fairly big if you just let them grow. And as long as you keep them inside, they will just keep growing and keep producing. So I don't know why people don't just keep their own pepper plants. I mean, if you had 10 pepper plants per person in your house, you wouldn't have to buy peppers. I mean, I guess depending on how rapidly you eat peppers, but yeah, I mean, that's my feeling about it. If you have a nice southern facing window, or even an eastern facing window, because you'll get the morning sun. Yep, right, rises in the east. Yeah. That would be good. So, or southwest would be even, or southeast facing would be even better. I think this is absolutely fascinating, the difference between this sweet potato okay, look at that. I mean, that is just awesome. this sweet potato is just going, going, going. You can see all of the roots down here, right? And you can even see some of these roots are climbing up and out. Okay, so they are drying out. They're not turning into new shoots, which is what I thought it was going to do. But yeah, this is going just absolutely wild. Okay, and the reason why I did it like this is because I've seen some people have the potato in the water, and there's one YouTube channel that I like. I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to post it later. But you know, I'm not sure if it was a male or female or what. But they had their sweet potatoes in the water, and then all the roots were coming off. But eventually that rots out the sweet potato, and he or she squeezed it, and it was really starting to rot. This one, because only the roots are in the water and not the potato, it is just nice and firm and getting kind of woody, which is totally fine because this is just going to be plant stock, right? So every single one of these is what's called a slit. Those can be broken off and planted or rerouted in water and then planted outside. Or I'm going to do, like I did with these bush beans, I'm going to do it in some 5-gallon buckets. And also, like with the potatoes. Oh! I can show you the potatoes. These have just gone crazy. When I planted them, they were about this tall, and a week later, they're this tall. So these, I believe, let's see, these are the baby red potatoes. I don't know if they're actually babies. I think they can get pretty big. It's just when they're sold like this, right? And then you can also find them a little bit bigger. They just sell them in different sizes because that's how potatoes grow, right? They don't all grow one same size. And because they're underground, you can't really tell. But yeah, I was going to do some sweet potatoes in 5-gallon buckets, and then also regular potatoes, obviously. But what I was going to say is I can't believe the difference between this one and that one over there. This one it was done in exactly the same way, but it has not sent out any roots, which is absolutely fascinating to me. So I'm just gonna let it keep chugging along. But yeah, I just think it's crazy how different things develop at different rates. So I decided to move it over here under the grow light, because this here is a grow light. When I'm not recording, it kind of makes a weird, funky, purpley blue, reddish light. So it's kind of annoying for filming. But yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Possibly. Okay, so oregano, thyme is coming. Radishes, I watered the radishes and carrots yesterday. There's some peas that should be coming up. I don't know why they didn't yet. Peas are usually pretty quick. And I am so fascinated with this guy. I just need to talk about this guy again. Okay. So if you don't know the story of this guy, this is actually a pepper plant. And what happened is that it was broken under the first set of nodes, which means it has no nodes. which means that I don't think that this plant is ever gonna develop anything ever again. I think it's just stuck like this, but it has grown. This stem has grown. It is green, which means it's photosynthesizing. So I just think that's absolutely fascinating. I'm going to keep this guy going as long as I can just to see what happens. Yeah. Got a nice garlic. Needs to be transplanted. Another one here. Oh, this is a wild huckleberry, and I think it is starting to put out some real leaves, and so I'm really, really excited. Our family had a huckleberry tree or bush or whatever shrub, whatever you want to call it, in our front yard and quite a few in our backyard, and as kids we would just eat them off the bush, and they're kind of tart but really good. And so we would go around and pick a whole bunch of them and make like huckleberry tarts. Because my mom is a really good pie maker, and so when she had leftover pie dough, we would just cut them into small circles with a biscuit cutter, and then put them in like a mini muffin tin or whatever. Actually, I think she might have a specialized tin for little tartlets, and then just put the huckleberries and sprinkle some sugar on top. Oh, so good. And then also she makes really, really good jam. So what you do is just put jam in it and bake it like a little pie, and that's really good. Okay. Yeah, got some more. These bush beans, I don't know if they're gonna make it. This one probably not. Because they never got transplanted. But I think that's gonna be okay, because I have 4 here, and these are kind of experimental. So these are 2 bush beans in one, growing alongside 2 kales that were accidentally planted with them. So all of these bush beans also have a tag-along kale, because they were planted at the same time. The bush beans came up, and then the kale came up. And I was like, oh, okay. Actually, no, the kale came up first, and then the bush beans surprised me. But yeah, so they all have a tag-along kale. This one is planted with a potato, a baby white potato. This one is by itself with the kale. This one is with two kale and 4 carrots. And it's just an experiment to see if a bucket can sustain, what a bucket can sustain. So these carrots I don't think are too long. They're 4 or 5 inch carrots, but still the root tip probably will go all the way down to the bottom, I'm assuming, as carrots I believe are fairly taprootish in character. Oh yeah, some more rice. Yeah, so my goal with the rice is I want to try to make a bowl of rice for each person in my family. I just think that would be the coolest thing for a suburban dwelling person to do that at home. I mean, kind of as an homage to my heritage and just kind of as a for fun thing to do. But yeah, still got to get the tomato experiment going, because I forgot I was going on vacation, so it wouldn't have been a very good experiment. We'll get the Korean gochu peppers going. I'm still waiting to see if this blueberry is going to eventually work out. I probably need to water it. It was just a whole blueberry from the store that I just put in here. I think blueberries work better if you send them through an animal, but we're not going to do that, so we'll just go like this. My hypothesis was blueberries that don't get passed through an animal also should propagate themselves, because nature is tenacious and a seed is a seed. So I'm thinking that the breakdown of the berry outside is going to help it. I don't know if blueberries need to be stratified though. I mean, they're a cold tolerant crop. That's why there's a lot of blueberries up in mountains that bears eat. These potatoes are going well. This experiment is going to be rather interesting. So I did cut some, I did put some holes down here, and I'm hoping that these roots are going to come through. I'm hoping these roots are going to come through and then start producing potatoes. I'm going to put this in a 5-gallon bucket, and hopefully I can just pick this up, cut it off, put it back, and let me start over. My plan is that I'm going to be able to pick this up, cut it off, take the potatoes, take out all the roots that I just cut off out, and have it grow again. That's my plan. I don't know if it's going to work. Potatoes oftentimes, I believe, take a lot of resources, so that that you need to plant, something new, a new crop in it, or where it was, so that it can produce again. Again, grow lab experiment. I think that'll be fun. Oh no, that leaf died. That's fine. It has another one. That's too bad. Yeah, that planter, can't really tell how much water is in the planter, and it's a fairly large planter, so I'm sure it takes quite a lot of water. But the drip tray is not so big, so I don't want to accidentally overwater, fill that drip tray up. And I don't want it to overflow. Yeah, so this part of the rice experiment, I think I'm going to have to call quits on. My hypothesis on this was that any rice grains that, maybe not. I see some sprouting, so never mind. Never mind. Okay, my hypothesis was that any rice grains that were not eaten by birds, not harvested, would fall on the ground and germinate, and I was right. So these are actually coming along. So I'm not going to give up on those. I watered the lemon tree last night. Watered the coconut. I was hoping that it would germinate by now, but it didn't. More grape cuttings. This cucumber, probably not going to make it, just like the other ones. I think these slow-growing native ivy, I believe these are native, I'm not sure, actually. I think that's going to be okay. I was hoping this guy would have come up. This is another Japanese maple. The top of this substrate feels really dry though, so maybe it needs some water. I guess I'll just put that here in the propagation box. I'm just pleased as punch with how these cuttings are coming along. Oh wow, this guy's really coming. Oh, wait. Huh. Well, yeah, those are new. So we got a couple of leaves that might bite it, but we do have new growth leaves coming at the very tip. The stems have, or the branches that were cut off. Oh, this whole leaf is brand new. That's pretty big. That's like a quarter of an inch, half an inch. The stems are really greened up, so it's definitely alive and kicking. So very nice. Oh yeah. So this and this are the same tree, but these are the mature leaves with the white, and then these are the less mature leaves with the green. And then I believe that this is the daughter or the son of this. So this is a cutting and this was a seedling. He is looking a little worse for wear. So I don't know. I might throw this guy in the propagation box along with its mother here. Oh, forgot about these. These are Harlequin glory bowers or bowers. I'm not sure what the pronunciation is. It's B-O-W-E-R. And they are starting to send out a branch and a branch. And a branch and a branch and a branch and a branch. So that is very, very cool. This one is definitely going to make it, and these are so beautiful. You should Google it up. Google it. It's Harlequin Glory Bower, B-O-W-E-R, Bower. They have the awesomest, really bright, brilliant blue berries, and flowers that are around it. Oh, they're so cool. So I'm really, really glad to get some of these to propagate. And all three of those worked out. I have another fig cutting here that I don't think is going to make it. Well, actually, no. I shouldn't say that. I do think it's going to make it, actually, but what I meant to say is it hasn't produced anything yet, but you can see that there's a node and a node starting to push out. This particular cutting was a longer cutting. It was like, oh wait. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, this was the top of this. And what I did with this is I dipped it in candle wax to seal it up. And I was going to see if that made any difference. But then again, I didn't have a control. So that was kind of silly on my part. But anyway, I just thought that this might be a method that would work to help it to retain some moisture, and that was based off of watching mushroom growing videos where they would cut up the oak logs for shiitake mushrooms and seal them up with food grade wax. Well, I didn't have the food grade wax, but I'm not going to be eating this branch, and I'm not going to be feeding any fungi, so I think that will be a fine method, and I'm hoping that we'll get some growth off of this guy. And this guy is really starting to go. It had 2 growing tips and a whole bunch of nodes, so I do see a branch starting to come off there, and possibly another one right in there. So that's going to be interesting. I think fig trees are really, really easy to propagate. Just based on the few that I've done. Another rhodey cutting. Same purple one. I only had 1 rosemary out of a whole slew of rosemary seeds come up, but that's okay because I have that now. Anything else? I think that's it. I mean, those junipers I hope will take. I was watching a juniper rooting video, and apparently it takes up to 9 months or something for them to root, which I thought was quite interesting. I do have 1 rhododendron cutting that I don't think is going to make it here. Oh, yeah, see, there's a defoliated leaf. Another one. Yeah. The stem is still green though, so there is still some hope. I might try to clear out a little bit of this. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, I do see a little node there that is starting to bud out a new branch or leaf bud or something. So I'm not giving up on this guy. I think it was just a natural defoliation. And hopefully that guy will work out. I'm just enamored with these grapefruits. I think that's so cool. Yeah. I guess there's a couple planters here that I can repurpose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't think those anise are ever going to come up. Those were just culinary star anise. The packages were rather old, and you have to start star anise, I believe, with fairly fresh seeds. This camellia is just going gangbusters. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 new buds coming off. And this one down here is really actually quite big. I'm going to uncover it now because I thought it was going to help it to root, but I think now it's just going to be, it's one of the bigger leaf or stem bud or the branches. I don't know what it's going to develop into, to be honest. But yeah, the apple orchard is looking quite nice. This grass has flowered. This is just a wild grass that came along for the ride with the moss, some of the moss that I put here. I believe some of this moss is dead, but oh well. This moss is okay. Yeah, oh, this apple trees, I think this might be a pear. That one's starting to come back, which is nice. It was really droopy before. Oh, this celery dried out, but I think it's gonna come back. Here is the snap pea, and still rather crisp. The water is not smelling so good. Probably have to change the water. But I'm not sure. Actually, I'm sorry. It's not snap peas. Those are snow peas. I'm not sure if those are going to take because snow peas are, I believe, are harvested slightly premature, and that way they're that nice thin pod, and when you want to plant them, you're supposed to let them develop a little bit more. But I thought because we're planting them fresh from the grocery store, that maybe we could bypass that that development period and just plant them. So I had one. How many did I have? Two. I think I had like 4 or 5 or 6 different ones with different characteristics. So yeah, this is unshelled snow pea. But I'm not sure if those are ever going to come up, so we will continue to keep an eye on them. I think probably I'll just give it another week or so because they're fresh peas. They should go fairly quickly if they are viable. So if not, maybe I'll just pull that experiment and repurpose those cups. I did have a kale dye there. I did have something here that never came up. What was this supposed to be? I'm not quite sure. Along with this other one here. That looks like a double kale planting. This little lovely is still going gangbusters. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 new branches starting to form there. There's a new branch there, so that's 8. And then we have 1, 2, 3 branches that are fairly developed, an inch or more. This one is just crazy. This one branch has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of its own branches, 10 of its own branches, and those branches each have branches, so that is pretty cool. In my opinion. Like I said, dragon fruit, some potatoes popped up. Gotta get those bush beans transplanted. Even though this one bush bean is like going pretty good. I guess compared to this it's not. I guess that's the same tri-leaf structure. Anyway. Okay, yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Again, my name is Scott. This has been GrowSeattle, and this is the GrowSeattle Grow Lab Garden. Thanks for watching.